Hello, my name is Jacob, and this is Thunderpod. Joining me are,
Grace?
And Henry.
and today we're going to be talking about the story of Pedro de Ayarza, The Purchase of Whiteness by Anne Tounam. So, to give some context for the story, the Bourbon social agenda in the Indies involved questions of birth and race. So, in the Indies, there were three social classes: the Spaniards, the Indians, and the castes. For the Spaniards, it was essential that the Indians and castes are degraded so that they can keep their social status and their whiteness. So much so that it was illegal for Indians to mingle with other castes. So this sets the stage for the Royal Pragmatic in 1778, which attempted to maintain social hierarchies by giving parents the ability to appeal to royal officials, which would prevent the marriage if the bride or the groom had a birth defect or if they were not white. However, there was a catch because people could purchase the legal status of whiteness by appealing to the Camara, who are a subgroup of the Council of the Indies, who could grant the legal status of whiteness. In our story today, Pedro de Ayarza, who is a well-regarded Panamanian merchant, sought the status of whiteness for himself and for his sons.
Okay, so moving on, we're going to break down each of Pedro de Ayarza's four petitions. So to start off with the first one, a little bit more background information. In order to be able to purchase whiteness and the respect that Pedro was looking for, you really needed to have high standing within your own community, and you needed to be able to demonstrate your service to the king and the state. So Pedro, luckily for him, he was already wealthy enough to enjoy certain privileges of whiteness. He was already respected within his community. It was really about the title for him and the title for his sons. Pedro had served as a military captain for 20 years, and he had partially subsidized the military on multiple occasions. So he clearly had a vast background of helping his state and his king. Pedro was essentially the poster child for what this program and this process was supposed to be about and who it was supposed to be for. This is why it was so surprising that when he came, this is why it was so surprising that his appeal, his petition, was denied for himself and for his two youngest sons. His oldest son, though, Yosef, was granted whiteness and the title of being a don, the title of respect. But unfortunately, Pedro and his sons were both denied. So I'll pass it on to Grace, and we can start to talk about his next petitions.
Thank you so much, Henry. That sounded great. So Ayarza's second petition took place in the year 1799 to 1803. After graduating from university, Yosef began an apprenticeship to practice as a lawyer. By 1800, debate amongst two lawyers began over whether or not he should be admitted to the bar. One side of the debate argued that a lot of people receive degrees after graduating and never become lawyers, so it wouldn't make a difference if he didn't get the chance to practice law. But the other side argued that he should get his chance like everyone else, and it's only fair. At the same time that this debate was happening, Pedro was still collecting letters of recommendations for his two younger sons who were still seeking to graduate. Additionally, he was still hoping to become a don himself. That's Pedro de Ayarza. He applied again in the year 1802, and as he did for his first petition, he listed more of his military services and services to the king. In order to make his arguments for his sons heard, he had to emphasize that they were worthy, meaning that they respected their father and possessed good conduct. To me, I think it's pretty crazy that he had to emphasize the worthiness of his own sons for such criteria. In the end, the two youngest sons, that is, were not recommended to receive university degrees. Instead, it was suggested that because they were an age where they could begin another career, knowledge that they'd already gotten at university could serve them in nearly any employment. It was decided that the, quote, racially mixed should not become lawyers, and that jobs in agriculture and commerce would be better suited for their situation. This is crazy to me also. Additionally, Yosef was allowed to become a lawyer and a don, as mentioned above. However, the Ministry of Justice and the king refused to approve the whitenings of the eldest son and the rest of the family. Or the youngest son, sorry, and the rest of the family. As for the third petition, this happened in 1804 and 1806. In this case, Ayarza petitioned again, asking the king to allow his two youngest sons to pursue careers beyond agriculture or commerce, as I mentioned before. In 1806, the Camara reviewed the application one more time, and they decided to give the Ayarzas another chance. The Camara were sensitized by the 1803 reversal of the decision to whiten the two younger sons, and thus they passed the documents of the administrative change. This alerted the king of the predicament. When overturned, it was well known that the Camaristas tended to revert to conservatism, and thus they tabled the Ayarza petition with the others. The fourth and final petition took place in the year 1807, and in this case, it was in the form of a letter written by Pedro's Spanish attorney. Pedro no longer sought to be made a don in this petition. Instead, he further pleaded for the future of his two youngest sons. He wanted them to be given credit where it was due for graduating from university. Ayarza said that the king had used his, quote, supreme authority, unquote, in granting gracias to Joseph, and he begged for equal grace for the two younger brothers. This is because there would be great dissension amongst them otherwise, and the brothers would be considered to have, quote, such different states of quality. In the end, the Camaristas ordered the Ayarza case to be united with the other documents, and indefinitely it sat in limbo. So that was a lot to take in. So just to conclude, a few takeaways that we'd like you guys to remember. The people of the Camara and the Spanish nobility were afraid of the precedent that they would set if they granted Pedro de Ayarza and his sons whiteness and everything else entailed in the petition. They didn't want to be forced to reference this decision in the years to come, seeing as this was one of the first major petition requests after the huge law change in the year 1795. Additionally, it's very interesting how whiteness was seen as almost a tangible level of status, and it was something that could be earned with enough wealth and power. So now I'd like to pass it back to Jacob.
Thanks, Grace. Yeah, I totally agree. There is absolutely no real precedent for denying somebody education or really anything else based on the color of their skin, which is showed by the fact that they only kept tabling the petitions, and they didn't just want to set, because they didn't want to set the legal precedent, that there is absolutely no legal basis for denying someone education on the basis of their skin.
Yeah, and then that's a really great point, Jacob and Grace. And just to bring it back sort of to present day, because I think especially in certain parts of Latin America, Brazil especially, the disparity in privilege and opportunity between white and people of African heritage is shocking. I have here that the number of illiterate people who are Black in Brazil is 9.2 million, while the number of illiterate white people in Brazil is 3.6 million. So the disparity clearly has continued all throughout different parts of Latin America, and it still is present today, which is sort of horrifying. Yeah, and that's, I mean, just to wrap up, that was our sort of summary and our ideas about the purchase of whiteness and the story of Pedro de Ayarza by Anne Twinham. I hope you guys enjoyed, and we'll see you next time on the Thunderpod.
Peace.